Chapter 20. Treating of what happened during the 9 months of the pregnancy of Saint Anne, the doings of the Most Holy Mary in the womb of her mother, and those of Saint Anne during that time. The Most Holy Mary, being conceived without sin as described above, was entirely absorbed in spirit and entranced by her first vision of the divinity. At the first instant, and in the narrow dwelling of the maternal womb, began the love of God in her most blessed soul, never to be interrupted, but to continue through all the eternities of that high glory which she now enjoys at the right hand of her divine Son. In order that she might grow in the contemplation and love of God, not only by the infused knowledge of created things, but also by the direct vision of the Trinity itself, and in order that she might exercise herself in many acts of virtue befitting her present state, the Lord repeated the wonderful vision and manifestation of his divinity on 2 other occasions, so that the Blessed Trinity manifested itself to her in abstract vision 3 times before her birth. First, at the instant of her conception, then in the 4th or 5th month, and the 3rd time on the day before her birth. This vision was not continual, but it must not be inferred that she did not enjoy another kind of vision, very exalted and superior to the one by which she perceived the essence of God in the light of faith. For in Most Holy Mary these kinds of visions were incessant and continual, and superior to all the visions of the saints during their earthly pilgrimage. This abstract vision of the divinity, though not incompatible with her present condition on earth, was nevertheless so high and immediate that it could not well be continuous in her mortal state, where she was to merit the glory of intuitive vision by other acts. It was a special favor to assist her in attaining thereto, for it left in her soul the impress of the Lord's image, and raised and consumed her whole being with a burning love of God. These affections were renewed continually during these visions in the most holy soul of Mary, while she remained in the womb of Holy Anne. Thus it happened that, being in full possession of her intellectual faculties, and occupying herself without intermission in prayer for the human race, in heroic acts of adoration, in reverence and love of God in company with the angels, she did not feel the narrowness and confinement of her natural prison, nor the restriction of her senses, nor the other restraints inseparable from such a state. To all this she gave no heed, living more in her beloved than in the womb of her mother or in herself. The last of the 3 visions was accompanied by new and more wonderful favors of the Lord. It was to prepare her for the entrance into the world and for intercourse with mortals. In accordance with the divine will, the Princess of Heaven said to the Lord, "Most High God, Lord of my being, soul of my life and life of my soul, infinite in thy attributes and perfections, incomprehensible, mighty and rich in mercies, my King and Sovereign, out of nothing hast thou given me existence. Without any merits of mine thou hast enriched me with the treasures of thy divine light and grace, in order that by them I may instantly perceive thy immutable being and divine perfections, and that thus thou mightest be the first object of my vision and love, not permitting me to seek any other than thee, the highest good and all my joy. Thou commandest me, my Lord, to issue forth and enter into the material light and converse with creatures. In thy own being, whence all things are reflected as in a most perfect mirror, I have discerned the dangerous state and the miseries of mortal life. If, on account of my natural weakness and debility, there is danger lest even in the least point I fail in thy love and service, and if it is possible that I die here, let me die now, before I pass into a state where I may lose thee. And if thy holy will, my Lord and Master, is to be fulfilled, and I am to embark on the tempestuous sea of this world, I beseech thee, most high and mighty God of my soul, to govern my life, direct my steps and all my actions toward pleasing thee. Order in me holy love, that in the new use which I am to make of creatures, and by thy aid, it may continue to grow. I have perceived in thee the ingratitude of many souls, and as I am of their nature, I fear with good reason that perhaps I may become guilty of the same fault. In this narrow cavity of my mother's womb I have enjoyed the infinite vastness of thy divinity. Here I possessed all good, thee thyself, my beloved, and since here thou alone art my portion and possession, I know not whether outside of this enclosure I may not lose it at the sight of the created light, and in the use of my senses. If it were possible and appropriate to renounce the intercourse of approaching life, I would gladly renounce and lose the experience of it. But let not my will but thine be done. Therefore, since thou wishest it, confer upon me thy blessing and goodwill at my entrance into the world, and do not deprive me of thy divine protection during the earthly course in which thou placest me. Having thus poured forth her prayer, the most sweet child Mary received the benediction of the Most High and the command to issue forth into the light of the visible sun, at the same time being enlightened for the fulfillment of all his desires. The most happy mother, Holy Anne, passed the days of her pregnancy altogether spiritualized by the divine operations and by the sweet workings of the Holy Ghost in all her faculties. Divine Providence, however, in order to direct her course to greater merit and reward, ordained that the ballast of trouble be not wanting, for without it the cargo of grace and love is scarcely ever secure. In order to understand better what happened to this holy woman, it must be remembered that Satan, after he was hurled with the other bad angels from heaven into the infernal torments, never ceased, during the reign of the old law, to search through the earth, hovering with lurking vigilance above the women of distinguished holiness, in order to find her whose sign he had seen, and whose heel was to bruise and crush his head. Lucifer's wrath against men was so fierce that he would not trust this investigation to his inferiors alone, but leaving them to operate against the virtuous women in general, he himself attended to this matter and assiduously hovered around those who signalized themselves more particularly in the exercise of virtue and in the grace of the Most High.